Oh man, I'm still watching Batman Begins. For me, the best superhero movie of all time and very inspirational. Now, you might think this is grandiose, but there are parallels in my life to the way Bruce Wayne's life and the way the script is written in there. And you might diagnose me quickly grandiose personality disorder, or you might ask what these are, and I will explain them. For example, why do I choose to fall? Not just what do we do when we fall. I accidentally brought this book to the bathroom when I already finished it instead of the other one I'm trying to finish. So I read like I wanted because I was upset with the ending and it made me upset with the author, and I was not sure before I filmed a vlog about it if it was fair or not. And I read it again, and I'm interpreting it a little bit differently, and I'll have to read the whole thing again too because it's very different than what I usually read, and I still, I'm not a fan of the ending. I think, he decided what the ending would be really early on, and if he had written it and then read it as the reader, so if he was reader-centered, he probably would have come up with some other alternatives, or even written different ones, because there's so many different ones you can write to something that builds so much. One of the reviews is the first part of this book, and it doesn't talk about the second part. Well, not in that quote, anyways. Yeah, I think again, the biggest power or defense against people that are trying to harm you is transparency. And I think if there was a Bruce Wayne, a Batman, and he knew about me, he would fund what I do as a way of life to kind of utilize that a bit more. Like, for example, I was thinking, it's not going to be possible or likely that I'd find 6 to 8 people that would accept, after maybe, let's say, taking a few different life skills lessons, to say, can we film one where we agree that all of it will be posted online transparently? So not just so people know what life skills lessons are, but the power of healing and personal development and growth and self-actualization, the empowerment of transparency, not wearing a mask. Because during this, there'd be times we look good, we bad, or even we question, did I look good, did I look bad? And when all these masks that are always in the proto societies we live in, we always want to put on ourselves, or are put on to us without our knowledge or acceptance, is just so harmful. And in that lesson, I would also be triggered in some ways during this thing, right? This is like a big part of what I've been saying in my life's work, how important such a concept is to healing humanity. I don't call myself the doctor of humanics, because, I'm academically wanting to explain, the patterns of our behaviors in the history of our species, but I also, I've been proposing and have found and have wanted to deliver openly solutions. And this thing is, and of course I'd be triggered. There'd be things happening during this lesson, and it would be, I agree too. But the way it would be for me would be probably easier than the participants, if they ever existed, some that would accept. And they would have to accept after taking a few and see that they're the right participants. Let's say that I know, for example, that some of their triggers still exist and they come up, because that's a very good learning process for the world to see for free on the internet. People are saying, oh, Trudeau is a pawn of the Chinese. You know what's ridiculous about that? And I'm not saying the Chinese aren't trying to, get pawns everywhere or influence everywhere, but you know who's better at it, and it's been probably doing it longer, is the USA. So for me, the patterns show that he's more a pawn of the USA, but not as much as people realize. Like, he's trying to find a good balance between his intentions and the intelligence agency of our own country and all these things. But it's hard. Like, sometimes, like the USA can't stop themselves. That's all they know now. They're just locked into these self-sabotaging, culture-breaking patterns that don't just break other cultures elsewhere, but their own. they can't help thinking guns and spies and all this stuff will provide them as a juvenile nation a sense of security as insecure children. So, I mean, they're more likely to be, the ones, putting pressure and influence on Trudeau, who's trying to balance everything, and doing the best he can, and probably not worse than anybody else that's in politics in Canada right now. But who would scare me to be in politics, as I've been saying more, is Poilievre, who is very likely more susceptible and already probably has accepted more influence from the USA, you know. And so that scares me more. But the thing is, though, is I'm still in paradigms above that where I wish there was still no nations, right? I mean, the Anthropocene, if we really are smart enough to believe it, and even when we do believe it, I mean, we're still going to act the same because programming is programming. You can't deviate from it when it's that bad now. As my theory and the observations I keep giving to you is proving. So I wanted to say that when I dedicated a song to Ukraine's president, Zelenskyy, that I undedicated it to him a month later. And if you read the text of what I said about that, is that whether he was accepting a plan and had been approached or promoted to play a long game against Russia, is he also had the opportunity to play the double spy or triple spy and expose everything, which would have been culture repairing for his nation, the Russian nation, the USA, us, every nation. But right now, I mean, the United Nation is so sick. I mean, if you look at the 5 countries that are in the Security Council, I mean, these are the worst villains of history, and they're acting the same way. So I don't know what to tell you. He could have exposed a lot of stuff, Vladimir Zelenskyy, and he might have been assassinated, but he would have gone down in history as the real Captain Accountability a hell of a lot more than I would have the opportunity to, as a man who leads really a simple life. You might not think so, and it might not feel like it to be because there's a lot of hardships. When I was researching homelessness as a homeless person, by choice in part because I didn't want to sell my humanity away that much anymore, and I did realize I was selling it away in certain ways, but they were still better than the norm. And I could live with that. And then suddenly, my ethics and my morals increased to the point that it's interesting how when I sent a very specifically written email to one of the biggest churches in the Vancouver city, is the response from the person there. So again, the religious leaders, the political leaders, the rich people. Let's say somebody's born in a rich family that has benefited from how petroleum has poisoned you and your children's brains, and cigarettes and cannabis and all sorts of things, never ending. It makes me think, are they villains? People born there, where the momentum during this time of HSD is that they almost are not even able to think that there's a better way to be more human. So I mean, but when somebody like Trudeau is faced with moral dilemmas, I tell you, he takes more time to ponder them, a lot more than Poilievre would. So it's like the sad thing about David Letterman right now is he's just an old man who was easily manipulated by the USA to do this interview with Zelenskyy, with this game of putting something in his hand at the end. And he really thinks he's great, in his older age, David Letterman, to have evolved in that way, but he devolved and he can't see it. And it's because HSD now is just confusing right and wrong so much in your complex little lives that you don't even see how, the villains of history are you, but on steroids as a majority, 99.98% of you. So in a way, David Letterman will never know that he actually retired as if he was the CEO of business as usual General Electric.